Wandering Spirits. I'm Oliver Perrin, back again with Tim Rudisil to continue his discussion of esoterica, which is rather a different creature than the little odds and ends that I will be treating in my discussions. You guys said you're interested, so don't fucking blame me. So I will turn it over to him. Tim, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about belief systems.
Belief systems. Yes, lovely things. Everyone has them, and they vary greatly. Everything from Roman Catholicism to Mithraism to Wicca to Voodoo, Santeria, Mayombe, Palomonte, Quimbanda, Umbanda, all sorts of lovely belief systems. And atheism is good too. They all come with clothes you must wear, things you must have with you, athames and chalices and salt and, oh goodness, all kinds of things, machetes, everything, chalices to drink your transubstantiated wine from. Participate in the
mihrabs in a particular corner of the mosque, or signs that must be inscribed upon the ground, or drums that have to be covered with fish skin.
I see you've some knowledge of this, Ollie. Yes. See, the real thing is that they all relate to mythologies. And mythologies are lovely things. They tell you...
Every mythos goes with an ethos, right?
Well, yes, it does. And every mythos transcribes itself into behavior patterns. Behavior, belief, transmission systems, ways the young are encouraged in their belief systems, etc., etc., etc. And they all are nothing more than ways that worked once, usually for, goodness, a great founder. Only the great founder kept trying to include more people, because we always want more people, don't we? The more who believe as we do, the more right we are, yes?
So it is said.
So it is said. So basically, the idea that we have these belief systems, whether they be Wicca, whether they be Voodoo, whether they be Santeria, whether they be Roman Catholicism or Protestantism.
Chaos magic.
Chaos magic, all the same. You whirl on one leg holding a torch, set yourself on fire. It's a lovely thing. I have it on the highest authority.
Yes.
Fellow once told me he set himself on fire doing some sort of ritual.
That was, yes, Saturn ritual, yes.
Yes, he did.
Caught his robe on fire. It was rather amusing to watch.
Oh, he wore a robe, did he?
Saturn ritual, a hooded robe, no less.
Hooded robe. Very good.
I had my robes at that age made by a girl who was going to fashion college, so my shit looked good.
Grand to hear it, old son. I'm so glad for you. Do you still have them?
Oh, no. And just for our viewers, I'm not the one who set myself on fire.
Oh, good Lord, no. I know that. No, you see, the thing is that at one time it was very important to you that you have your robe.
Yes, it was. And all the tattoos. The different signifiers, nose rings, ear rings, long hair, short hair. Yes.
Yes. All of that contributed to your passage on this pathway. And this pathway was chosen by the ego persona complex with, shall we say, due consultation with the lesser self.
That pathway being... That pathway being the one from ignorance to knowledge, of a sort.
Well, that's all you ever get is of a sort.
Meaning, all knowledge is always, already, only of a sort.
Yes, it can only be of a sort. what uses are there for the let us say ultimate lessons of Catholicism to somebody who is Judaic? What can these ultimate lessons mean to someone who is Wiccan? Everyone comes up in the way that they have to. Many, many staircases lead upward on Hilton's ladder of perfection. These are only the very basic, most base and most gross of beginnings. Nothing of these pathways can be set aside. Nothing of them can be done away with.
If it could, you wouldn't be on them.
That's my point. If it could, then you wouldn't be on them. How many people worship Marduk at this point?
Yeah. Not so many. Shin, Shamash, nah, not so much.
Yeah, well, you know how it goes, old son. Bast, of course, finds a few people out there to bring her things one way and another, but I question whether they really believe in her.
Cat lovers.
Well, cat being what it is. The point being that each of these ways of being and ways of becoming encompasses a universal arc. When that universal arc is realized, then the individual stands there in all their glory, arrayed as Solomon. Well, that's fine. But there's always tomorrow. You see? And one thing that doesn't fit, one thing that serves as the stimulus to move on.
The burr in the stocking, as it were, the pea under however many mattresses for the princess.
Indeed so.
That thing that always prevents that kind of deep and comfortable sleep we might otherwise aspire to.
Indeed so. And part of that, of course, is trying to warp, shape, twist, and manipulate the thing that we have found that works so that other people may see it too and agree with us. So you have to take the knowledges you gained and trim them, you see. Like that old Greek fellow who had the bed, you know, Procrustes. Had to stretch some and shorten others. In this way, he does it with ideas and ideals and ways of being, instead of to the person. He suits his cloth to the wearer thereof. This is why you had in Roman Catholicism friars, lay brothers, priests, and princes of the church. Each of them believed a little bit differently, and each of the orders of the church believed a little bit differently.
Yes, many big differences between a Franciscan, a Dominican, a Jesuit, a Carmelite, yes.
Oh my goodness, and a decalcin Carmelite, one must not forget, to which of course we owe the deep debt. The deep, deep debt, you see, of the two ways of the decalcin Carmelites. You remember them? No.
I do not.
You don't remember John of the Cross?
Oh, and St. Teresa of Avila. Yeah.
Oh, there they are. Lovely people. I knew you'd remember them given the proper time. Teresa of Avila and her art of memory.
The interior castle, yes.
The interior castles. Lovely woman. Lovely woman.
A late, yes, rather late Christian version of it, but the same threads and tendrils are still growing through its structure.
They are. as they do in dark night of the soul.
Yes, to jump to St. John of the Cross.
Indeed we shall. And then we shall leave them happily there in their medieval setting, running about with no shoes on, and take a look at the Aztec with their various gods who demanded the hearts, still beating hearts, of people, whether you go with devoted worshipers or merely captured slaves, doesn't matter to me.
Or skinning them and wearing their skins, and there's all sorts of interesting things from our enlightened Mesoamerican worshippers.
Well, there you are, you see. I see you some knowledge of them. So what we have is that no matter what you believe, whether it be Voodoo, and the gods come down and seat themselves in your head and ride you like a horse, or it be Mithras, and you're bathed in the blood of the bull. You have garments you wear, not only physical garments like the robe we spoke of, but psychological garments that you wear. Things you can and cannot do. Things you must and must not do. Ways you must be and ways you may not be. All of them whittling in on the ego and the lesser self. Each of them having its own cost, not only in behaviors, but in karma. Each of them being a way that you can spend an incredible number of lives in. Each of them being but a sliver of the truth, the merest sliver of a truth so great as to make them all laughable, completely laughable. But no one wants to laugh, except at those things they themselves do not believe in, of course.
Yes, the rest is a veil of tears.
Oh, yes, of course. You know what they say about it. One man's religion is another man's belly laugh. It's a good thing to remember, especially when you're dealing with ways of being, ways to behave, countenanced from on high, whether it be Sinai or wherever. It really doesn't matter. You come down to one thing and one thing only. What do you want it to be?
Or that, favorite we've discussed so many times from Hellraiser. What's your pleasure, sir?
What's your pleasure, sir? Closer than anyone might wish to the truth. What's your pleasure? What's your fear, sir? What do you fear the most? Are you like the Norse and you fear a great plain covered in gray fog and you have no shoes?
Cold as
that is
fucking hell, yes.
Hell was originally cold.
Yes, yes.
Or is it the sundering of brotherhood that the Mithrians feared? Can it be that Mithras was but one of four gods? Well, that's topic of another time.
Yes, and given that all those Persian currents came out of the same roots as the Vedic stuff, you can be sure that the unitary deities were always ready to split down the center, sprout 200 arms on either side, and become faces of one another.
Well, that was because the old Vedic philosophers knew that there was a multiverse. Therefore, you had to have all of these hands to operate in this multiverse, all of these spaces to look out upon the multiverse. It was a way to explain it to illiterate herdsmen. And as it was useful, they simply kept the herdsmen illiterate. Instead of trying to raise the standard of the herdsman.
Enter, yes, the priesthoods of a variety of kinds, wanting chickens in exchange for their knowledge. Chickens, gold, whatever it is, you can substitute one for the other.
Well, as the ignorant herdsman gets more of the stuff, yes, you constantly raise the price. He eventually owes you daughters and things like that. It's lovely stuff. You can make a killing in the ministerial business. You just have to be able to swallow your own regurgitation. Doesn't matter to me. There are millions of them, everything from gurus to shamans to Presbyterian to Lutheran to born-again Baptists to Roman Catholics and other people of one sort and another out there, going along, doing their voodoo rituals. Excuse me, their rituals, whether they're voodoo or not. You have, in voodoo, you have so many types of drums. There are the drums that are never played, and yet they must be fed. And so there must be a homfa, a central belief place, a navel of the world, as it were, where a huge post rises up from the center, and all the drums, whether it be the man or the big man drum, whatever, are all turned with their lower chambers toward this pillar. And they are succored in this place.
Given succor. Or you mean both meanings?
Actually, both. They are succored in this place. They are given help. They are given what they need. Just as the gods of voodoo are given what they need. Because, to be honest with you, the main god you haven't got to worry about.
Kind of like,
he understands everything.
Kind of like the great spirit of the Amerindians, or even the vestigial forms that you can still trace out of a greater god in the classic pagan religions.
Indeed, he understands everything. Understands it all. Desire for desire. Covers a multitude of sins, does it not? Or at least so Culiano thought. So did Colonus.
Colonna.
These are,
yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. These are ways in which the explanations of reality from beginning, everybody has a Genesis myth, right? All the Hopi came out of the hole in the ground, right? Adam and Eve, or Adam and Steve, I don't know which is, well, but anyway.
Adam and Lilith, yeah.
Yeah, Adam and Lilith. Oh, God, you're going to actually go there. All right. Adam and Lilith, Adam and Eve, these are two different tales, and yet told of the same man. We'll get into them another time. What you have is always a Genesis myth. Doesn't matter whose. Enkidu had a Genesis myth, right? Doesn't matter. The real thing that matters is the explanation, because the explanation has to contain its own explication. In this, you wind up finding more and more people, believers, who will believe with you, and you kill the rest. Oh, damn it, that's Mohammedanism, isn't it? I'm terribly sorry.
Slight variant there, yes.
Yes, and just like Mohammedanism, they split and split and split. Shia and Sunni and Wahhabi, all of these different sorts of Islam, which basically means obedience and surrender. Surrender to what? Obedience to what? By the laws of God, of course, handed down by his imams. Your turban goes back to the Sufis.
Oh, this fez here, yes.
It's fez, yes, excuse me, fez.
Or if you get your different stripes of Bektashi, you've got them with their 6 sectioned hats, their 12 sectioned hats, their 4 sectioned hats. And it becomes a rich social structure, as I saw in looking at the old Ottoman graveyards, where the tombstones have the headgear of the person buried, so you knew their station in life. And we have similar things with the medieval arrangements. You had similar things in the classical world, with the Peleus, the cap of Castor and Pollux, these twins hatched from eggs, poor Leda. And then that becomes the freedman's cap. Yes. All the way to
on and on, doesn't it?
The Phrygian cap, which is a variant of the Peleus, which then gets worn, with its little ribbons on it for the revolution in France. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
They do, Ollie. They do. Especially the finding of believers, nurturing the believers in the system that must be believed in, and killing all the rest. Damn it, man. Oh, well, a tisket, a tasket, a head in a basket, it cannot respond to questions that you ask it. That was the catechism of the revolution in France, Yeah, a tisket, a tasket.
Even socialism today, which has its costumes that everyone remarks upon when they look at SJWs, from green hair to black masks.
I do love them. Oh. See, the thing is that everyone has their attire that they wear. And no one ever fucking knows why.
Yeah, that is a rather funny thing.
That's just what one wears.
And you begin to ask them about it. Yeah, very, very strange. And even in the cultures where it's still alive, I should say particularly in the cultures where it's still alive, you go to try to, discuss with them why that thing is, why it is done, and the rest. And there's a surprising, rather firmly entrenched ignorance there, usually.
Yes, there is, but it's not really an ignorance. It's a willful ignorance. They actually know. Good Lord, look at the Roman Catholic Church. You can see everywhere they've ever been. Bits and pieces hanging off the priests.
Right.
All the way up to and including the long white robe worn by the Pope.
And the altar itself.
Right? Oh, now the altar itself is a strange thing.
All this stuff going back to the Roman priesthood. As in Roman, not Roman Catholic, like Roman.
Yes, I know. And of course the Romans, goodness gracious, they go back to the Alba Longa and to Troy.
Yes, if one accepts Virgil's approach, and he wasn't the only one who argued for it. And I guess there's now genetic evidence that rather supports Virgil's take. And you can see with Shi'ism that it's the same kind of thing. The Sassanids were under attack from the barbarous, barely half civilized Arabs with their Islam. And so the Sassanid Persians, who had, people locked up and buried in their currents left over from the early Zoroastrians, found a way to adjust, found a way to move within the tradition that had rolled over them and maintain many of their beliefs. And you see even with the Baha'i today, it's just basically a variant of Persian religion that flowed through Shi'ism. And then, based on some rather clever decisions made in the 19th century, decided that the Persian religion as such, or the vehicle for that old religion, would survive best if divorced from Islam, and presto, you've got Baha'is. Goodness gracious. You don't mean to say. You're seeing similar things with Ahmadiyya Muslims today who are trying to come up with a somewhat reformed version to ensure their survival. Indeed so. Much like you find amongst the
primitive Baptists here in America, especially up in my neck of the woods in Tennessee, where they have the snake handlers.
Holy rollers. Speaking in tongues.
Yeah, boy.
They're all different variants, I get.
Yep. And everybody has to wear the appropriate uniform. Everybody. Every swinging dick among them has to wear the right costume.
Intellectually and physically.
Yes, indeed. Intellectually and physically. And yet, each of them offers only a sliver of the truth.
Elsewise, why would they all be?
Well, I don't know, Ollie. Why would they be? The ego plays tricks. It wants to try everything possible. Because each of these religions amounts to a psychotic split. Just as you have a person who gets a psychotic split, so do peoples accept a psychotic split to explain that which is otherwise unexplainable to them. Because the truth is much too simple and yet complex for them.
We see a psychotic split even today in the West with issues of violence and responsibility to others.
Mm.
And this gives birth to the religion of socialism.
And its various ways of being, yes, which are currently taking over the world as we know it. That's really what's happening out here, Ollie. These people have no comprehension of it. They won't, because socialism is only a sliver of the truth. Merest sliver. Just happens to be code phrased in ways that make it look all inclusive. It's not. It is not in the least all inclusive.
Doesn't have much room for me.
Really? And yet, were you to join the ranks of the socialists and get the uniform, whatever form of socialism you wanted, whether it be the American quote-unquote capitalism or the American version of Antifa or whatever it might be, you would find soon that none of it really quite encompassed enough. Because socialism, capitalism, leave a large hole in the midst. And so people keep looking for religions to fill it. You will find Antifa, socialist capitalists, who are Wiccan, who are Vaudan, who are Roman Catholic. In their reality, they are these things. They have never gone beyond the single sliver they've been given, which they have been told they must not question. Must not. In not questioning, they doom themselves to reincarnation, as it were, over and over and over again, until finally they've exhausted all of this, and it simply beggars the non-questioning.
Doom.
You have to question.
Doom is an interesting word. Doom. It means to judge, to form a judgment, and to enact it, the sense that we keep as the semantic level of it that we are willing to recognize is the sense of to render judgment, and the sense that you were doomed to. But to doom comes from the same root as deem, to deem it so. And it's a beautiful multivalent little tidbit to gnaw upon. like a chew toy for a dog. This dog, anyway.
Oh, I like that.
Because to deem is to doom oneself. They are simultaneous. The very act of forming the judgment dooms one to the consequences of that given perspective. To deem is to doom.
And yet, does anyone ever deem or doom you to anything that you do not yourself choose? Along with all of the ramifications and accoutrements that go with the thing, whether it be a fez with or without turban, the robes that go with things, the Sephardic Jewish coats and so on, all of this nonsense. They serve only to set you apart and to determine how many of you there are. This was why Ataturk took the fez away from the Turk. He wanted a secular society. Fine. What you actually have with Christianity is the ability to say this is good and of God, this is bad and of the devil. Well, damn it, man. That's basically what all religions do, isn't it?
Jeepers. Even socialists. Punch a Nazi.
Punch a Nazi.
No hate on our streets.
Rock. Yes. They are such silly people, and yet they believe it wholeheartedly and will condemn their children to it without giving them the benefit of any sort of doubt. Any sort of doubt at all. Because all their behaviors, all the child's behaviors, the child's life must rest on these two columns, the good and the evil. Nonsense. And yet that's what they think. And so each and every group of individuals conveys to their progeny such ridiculous systems that they do not understand themselves. If you set them down, even the worst born-again Baptist, who at least accepts that they live in the 21st century, is going to be hard-pressed to tell you where heaven and hell are. Going to be hard-pressed to tell you about Jesus, except as an understanding that one believes in, which is to say they're just as well off as the fellows with the crocodile gods. After all, one believes in the crocodile gods. Not only that, but the crocodile gods come to eat and Jesus doesn't. Well, I'm sorry, but it's so.
See, you people asked for me to bring Tim into this discussion. I'm addressing our viewers now. This is your fault. Go on, Tim. I'm sorry.
That's quite all right. I don't mind a bit. Anyone who doesn't like it can click off whenever they want. Don't mind a bit. I would. I'd click off. Good God. Esoteric nonsense out of an old man such as myself? How can that be of any value? What you have to remember, all of these things, all of them, not only are predicated on assumptions that are themselves only partial, though they claim to be universal. The rituals that they portray worked once for someone, and then someone convinced everybody else that they still did.
What comes to mind is that story about Christ saying, drop all the shit you have, leave it all behind, and follow me. And everyone interprets that today as worshiping Christ up on a cross instead of doing what he did in one's own individual way.
Oh, damn it, man. You're not going to be any fun at all in this, are you? Here I had hopes of bumping up against dyed-in-the-wool something. Sure. It's just like the cannibalism engaged in by the Christians with their transubstantiation rituals, converting the wine or grape juice, depending upon which church you go to, into blood, and the bread into the flesh. Well, now, what the fuck are we talking about? I mean, have you ever said this sort of nonsense to somebody who has no knowledge of Christianity? They're like, holy shit, man. You're going to drink blood and eat flesh? God damn. This is the way of it. No one ever questions, no one ever thinks, no one ever looks at this. They just accept it, bow their little heads, and pray, whether it's Voodoo, Santeria, Mayombe, Palomonte, Quimbanda, Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, all the forms of Islam. 5 times a day, there are ashes turned in the air. Wonderful. I am so glad. I just like to be in the front row so I don't have to smell everybody's ass. The thing is that the people use pebbles over there, Don't really think they're going to get it all off with just a pebble. Smooth, round river rock. Yeah. So at any rate, not to mention which, there's all those damn feet. God. The olfactory. Well, never mind. The thing is that everybody, every last one of them, refuses to look upon this, except for those who have the need to look deeply into this well. And they find themselves winding round and round and round the doctrines, the belief systems, the gods or God. They find themselves lost in the maze of their own devising.
That brings to mind those old alchemical images that you see with the labyrinth. And my favorite, the one I have in mind, I'm sure you know it well, I think we've even discussed it before, is where you see the people down in the labyrinth. But the negative spaces, the passage through the labyrinth, is the one thing. They then show these other figures who are up on top, and the barriers that keep the people locked into their path within the labyrinth below form the pathways for those above who can actually see the horizon. And that's an interesting thing about the old world term, temple, templum in Latin. It used to be that place where a person was able to see the horizon for 360 degrees around oneself. That is the origins of the Latin word temple. Now, it had its meanings, of course, for, the people who were watching the flights of birds, or, who wanted to hack a liver out of whatever it was and look for spots here and there. But
somebody caught in the tendrils of the religion, yes, of course.
Yes, and yet, however, the truth of it, the value of it remains for those who can see it, because the sacred place, fundamentally, is a place where the horizon is visible, 360 degrees around one. Food for thought, anyway.
I agree. It's very, very tasty little food for thought. And the thing is that it leads exactly to where we're going. If you can see all of the things around you, if you can see the people caught in the maze, then what do? Do you tell them about their being caught in a maze when all they can see are the walls on each side of them?
That brings up
Twists and turns.
the subject. It's that old phrase of yours, and I recently learned, I think it's Japanese. Do not speak to well frogs about the ocean.
To speak of oceans to well frogs is unwise, is the way that one goes.
As you know,
To speak of
I've locked that together now in my memory with the other phrase, they'll throw rocks at you until you stop moving.
Yes, indeed so. Yes, they will. And that's what happens if you speak to oceans, speak to well frogs of oceans. They will get together and throw rocks at you until you cease to move, which is what you deserve, because you're trying to short circuit the machinations of their ego persona complex and their lesser self. They're not ready to have the covers jerked off of this and some little something jump up and go, boo. No, they're not ready for that at all. It would terrify them. If you didn't believe in God, what would keep you from? Come on, man. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, the thing that occurs to me at that point, and I have my pantheist sympathies, so I'm not going to go so far as to say that I don't believe in some form of God, though mine might be a bit different than most people's conception of it. But the reality of it that always strikes me when confronted with that argument, if you didn't have religion, if you didn't have that moral guidance, if you didn't know, if you hadn't been told, if you didn't know what you were supposed to do and weren't supposed to do, then what would keep you from ... And the immediate things that comes to mind is me, motherfucker. Me. I would keep myself.
So you have within you all the laws handed down from Sinai.
In me, the laws are fulfilled.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm working on it anyway, but that's the theory.
I know. You see, the thing is that everybody has within them all of these things. They simply reject the obligation and responsibility of all of these things.
They prefer to hide their light under a bushel basket.
They would prefer to do that. They would prefer to not be accountable to any but Big Daddy in the sky, who can maybe be bought off.
And we come back around to your remark about the universality of transference.
Yes. And never realizing that for most of us, we transfer to the greater self. Some will transfer to the lesser self, but most of us transfer to something in between, because most of us have been polluted with the concept of angels. It's always wonderful to get into angels. I do love them so. Truly I do. How are we doing on time, Ollie? Am I coming to a cutoff point here anyway?
Yeah, a little past it, but I was drawn in by your discussion, as is so often the case. Can you provide us with a wrap-up statement for this idea of belief systems?
Well, no matter what your belief system may be, doesn't matter. It can incorporate the Arthurian legends. It really doesn't matter. It can go back to the old Celts, you see, and their little belief systems. It can go back to anything you want it to go back to.
Also true.
Yes, also true. Nordic nonsense. The point is that whatever it goes back to, whatever you believe in, you must not be ashamed to believe in it. But you must believe in it at least to the point that you pursue it. Because it's only by its pursuit that you're going to catch it. And catching it is why the fuck you came, why you're here, to know why. For this little sliver of knowledge, to know why, to know what. Eventually, you'll know who.